Welcome to another edition of Our Town. I'm Lance Delisle, co-host of this show. The host is Regan Jacobs. Hi.
Hi, Lance.
How are you?
I'm good.
How was your vacation?
Actually, it was really good.
Yeah?
How do you go from being in the Bahamas and then all of a sudden you're dealing with Old Man Winter has finally come to Kahnawake and the rest of the region, if you will. But I do have a joke for you really quickly.
Okay, I'm ready.
Just an on-air joke.
This is a vacation joke, right?
This is a vacation joke, sort of.
Okay.
So anchor person to weatherman.
Sure.
Concerning the weather last night, it says, "So, where's that 6 inches you promised me last night?" Dun, 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 dun. I thought that was funny. Not this way, not this anchor girl to the weatherman. Hey, weatherman.
It's good to be back here once again with
Yeah.
Regan. Big show though we have today. But before we get to the big show, Regan, everyone was talking about your vacation. How was it though to be away
Really?
from Kahnawake to be somewhere else? Especially
Who was talking about my vacation? I see nobody.
pretty much just me, I
Yeah.
guess.
I think you're being expansive there.
Yeah.
Actually, the vacation went really well. It was kind of like a last minute thing, but it was good to be away. But you know, it's hard to travel without the kids. We say we're gonna take 1 week a year just for ourselves, and it ends up being 5 days instead of 7. And
Right.
I hate to fly, so
I know, that's the other thing too.
yes, I hate flying. I really have to psych myself out to fly. So once a year on a plane is good enough for me. I don't know about anybody else, but coming back from 29 degrees, 30 degrees to winter's
Yeah.
on its way.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about margaritas or on the beach today.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
So, what else is happening in the news? Something really quick before we head out to the rest of the show. There was a meteor saying that last night on the West Island, for some reason, you've seen the
That's
news
right.
feed on Facebook light
That's
up
right.
about a large flash and a boom.
I have different people that live around in that area. A buddy of
Yeah.
mine in Ormstown said that it sounded like a car door slamming really loud.
Mm-hmm.
A friend of mine that lives in Saint Zotique said it sounded like as if a cow fell on top of his roof. So it must have been pretty
Mm-hmm.
loud. But I think it was the light that kind of shocked a lot of people
Yeah.
because they said reports everywhere from Ottawa down to the northern part of New York State, they said it was just completely lit up. Where was I doing all this? I was in my van and I was driving and I completely missed it all. I had Van Halen cranked up on my radio.
I didn't see anything here on this side either.
I didn't see a thing. I didn't hear a thing.
You hear
so I
reports
missed it.
coming in from the West Island, but what apparently is this questionable large lighting and sound is a meteor hitting the Earth's atmosphere, and it was a sonic boom. So I think we're going to be hearing more about that as the week goes on. Confirmation from the Environment Office and things like that. Not here in Kahnawake, I'm talking about at a regional level.
Right.
So, but it did make good banter on Facebook and, of course, here on Our Town. So things to expect aside from the meteor. And the weather, of course, is news-wise what's happening here in Kahnawake. We have the tobacco meetings that have been taking place and the issue of regulation here in Kahnawake
Right.
through the Mohawk Council of Kahnawake CDMP process. You also have a holiday train that pulled into Kahnawake, robbery at Old Malone.
Very interesting.
Making headlines and obviously traveling at the speed of light through the rumor mill here in our community. And finally, Turtle Island Theater Club. There was a rally that had taken place this past weekend, and we are going to speak to them. And also we've invited the executive director of Kahnawake, Sagot Has Community Services, to come in studio with us, Derek
Right.
Montour,
Right.
to discuss where things are at with the KSCS drama project, the evaluation and the inventory and things like that.
Right. It's going to be a very, very packed show. We want you guys to stick around and be a part of Our Town. We'll be back after this.
This program has been brought to you by Get and Go, a proud sponsor of Mohawk TV programming. And welcome back to the program. You're watching Our Town. And of course, earlier on in the program, we mentioned that Derek Montour, the executive director of Kahnawake Sagotiganhas Community Services, would be in studio with us today to talk about the ongoing issue here in the community with the Kahnawake Drama Club. So we're going to head into that story now. Derek, thank you for coming in today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. We are looking at clarifying some of the stories that are still continuously circulating in Kahnawake for the community. Of course, one of the recent issues that occurred just this past weekend was a rally from the theater community, where they marched from Cattery Hall to the steps of the services complex where community services is located. In your opinion, what was that like upon learning that this was the extent now that some of the theater community are going to, in order to get some attention from community services or make a statement?
Well, to be honest, I think the rally was a wonderful idea. Mm-hmm. It's a way to try to engage the theater community at large, to try to educate them on from their perception or point of view of how things are, and to try to have I guess I wouldn't say try to have a discussion, but at least make their position known. Mm-hmm. I just hope one day that we can sit back down to actually have a discussion about what can or can't be done. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, the last communication, that official communication I had from the theater company, and just to be clear, it's there's two kinds of issues, and it's a lack of clarity, and it's been a lack of clarity for us as well. There's the KSCS drama project, mm-hmm. which has since my open letter, I agreed to call it a program. Mm-hmm. And there's the Turtle Island Theater Company, right, and which is a separate entity in a sense. Right. KSCS drama program has the children's summer camp, mm-hmm. the Turtle Island Players, which is both teenagers and adults, and there's a after-school children's programming. That has been the understanding for years of what KSCS programming is for. So it's intended for children, funded under Brighter Futures, and we pay for Kevin's salary under community health dollars. Right. Musical entertainers has always been recognized as a fundraising activity for mm-hmm. the Turtle Island Theater Company. So they have a fundraising committee, and all of the proceeds from those productions would go back into trying to raise funds, initially called K-Stars. Mm-hmm. Kahnawake steering towards a real stage. Yeah. At some point it evolved. Right? Mm-hmm. So those are the two entities, not the drama club, because it gets confusing, and it gets confusing for us too, because people see it intertwined.
Yes, but it's because it has been very intertwined over the years. I mean, I understand that Kevin's salary was being paid for through Kahnawake Sagotiganhas Community Services, but now we're seeing a lot of accusations, I guess, coming mm-hmm. forth saying, well, you know what, these programs existed together, and the evolution of the drama club and the project, was always, I guess, status quo through previous executive directors to run the program this way, and so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. And then the whole issue of Cattery Hall, the leasing agreement, Kevin has come out saying, well, from what I understand, there is a process that things are at right now in terms of the inventory, mm-hmm. things that are in Cattery Hall. Mm-hmm. Who do they belong to? Things that are on loan, things that were donated or contributed, and October of this year, this surfaced, this issue, and not being able to have access to the theater. And we've had you and several other members on the show explaining this, but this process in November now has gone to the point where there's independent review going on that is being, I guess, managed by Luann Stacy. Can you explain that a little bit?
A lot of questions and everything you just
yes,
said.
It was like...
And that's the challenge for many community members, is it's it's very difficult to understand all the different factors that are happening. So to backtrack, the last official discussion we've had was I received a letter on September 25th, I believe, and it was essentially from the fundraising committee stating we want to be independent. We are requesting to turn over the lease and to turn over all the assets and continue funding the program, I'm assuming through Brighter Futures. That last part, I'm not sure if that's a full request, but I think it was more an assumption. I had responded back on the 26th, the day after, and I had said, thank you for letting me know your intent. Here's what I can do. First is I need to know, what does that transition process look like? You know, it's not easy to just turn over 20 years of assets and records and partnership to just say, okay, we're going our separate ways. I can't turn over the lease. It doesn't work that way. We have a lease agreement with the church where at a 3-month notice you can make changes. So if I give the church 3 months of notice, a change can be discussed. It would be unethical for us to just simply turn over a lease with somebody who we have an agreement with.
Would they allow it though? Because wasn't the lease negotiated by Kevin Seller?
Initially it was, and initially KSCS through the Brighter Futures was paying a portion, and the Turtle Island Theatre Company was paying another portion, the back half. And again, remembering that there's different components as far as on paper. So they were paying a portion of it. Same thing with Hydro. We were paying a portion, they were paying a portion.
Right.
So when I say we, it's through Brighter Futures funding that was happening.
So it was an equal partnership in regards to Kevin's idea and vision as to working in a theater company, and then you guys wanting to sponsor Kevin's vision. Because to me, it seems like there's, at one point, you see where Kevin's vision is, where they're talking about the K-Stars and wanting to create a theater, and then where I see your interest in there is through theater, educating people in regards to better oneself through the arts.
Kevin is a brilliant artistic director.
Absolutely.
Nobody's ever denied that, you know, and I'll say that to anybody.
Which I think is why a lot of people feel that this whole situation is more than unfortunate, that it seems that even after all of this time and all of this community effort, that there's still no resolution to them gaining access to Cattery Hall. And where do we go from here? And why, I think the biggest looming question is, have these theater community not been allowed to access Cattery Hall?
Not at all. Even from my first meeting with the committee, after we had temporarily suspended it, they asked, do we have availability to access the theater for a production, musical entertainers, etc.? I said, sure, but we have to work out an agreement on how that looks. What does that look like? We've already stated we need to do the evaluation and the inventory. You've told us, and I've been trying now for over a year, to gain clarity, to understand what revenue is coming in, expenses are going out, put some control measures in place to understand.
I get that, because I seen that there was in the press release that was issued in November was the stipulated financial reporting issues. So is that what you're referring to when you say that?
Some of them, yeah.
Okay.
So
Can you elaborate?
Sure. Which question do you want me to answer first, though?
You talked about, continue on what you were just saying.
So I had mentioned right at early September that you can have access to it, but we have to work out an agreement on how do we ensure the assets stay there, KSCS presence, because now we don't, Kevin resigned, or excuse me, Mr. Seller resigned, so we don't have an employee present.
Right.
So we'd have to work out, like if somebody wants to use KSCS building, we need somebody there. So we had to work out that. We formulated an agreement. Look, we need to do this inventory. How do we do it together? We drafted an agreement. We didn't hear anything back. We heard through Facebook and others, you know, we presented them with an agreement that they didn't like, but ultimately that was a way, and we still open to how do we work together, you know. But if you're only getting one side, you can't really answer that.
Right.
Now, to go to your second question about the accounting concerns, we know through our regular financial process, we know what funds and how they're being used for Better Futures. We know obviously for Kevin's salary. We have no concern, and nor should we, about the fundraising committee's activities, such as musical entertainers or those, because that's not our responsibility.
Right.
What is of a concern was the box office accounting for the shows that were under KSCS.
Right.
Okay? So those children's programming.
Like Les Mis and
I forget if Les
shows.
Mis was a musical entertainer, and honestly, I'm not sure. But all the other like Fiddler on the Roof, as an
Right.
example.
Yeah.
Okay? So the box office funds directly go back into creating more productions.
Okay.
Right? So it's a revenue generating source specific to the programs that are being put on. So there should be an accounting of some sort. I am aware, or at least I was advised, and I'm not on the committee, but the previous committee had tried to talk with Kevin, Mr. Saylor, to try to help him put the control measures in place. He had been given the authority through Arlene to manage it himself, but he had to give quarterly reports back to KSCS on the expenses that were being made. The last report I had received, or we had received, was in 2011. So there was questions on what is the stance, what's coming in, what's not. And some of how the accounting was happening, there was missing receipts, missing things, it was no explanations. And if anybody knows in a business, I mean, you need to justify the different expenses that are going out if you're going to be auditing and other stuff. The box office account wasn't being audited. I don't know if it ever has. So my effort was to put control measures in place. And I've never said it, I didn't suspect anybody of theft, embezzlement, anything. But I don't know.
Did community services appoint independent
No, I mean,
auditors, if you will?
I don't know where that came up, where there was a decision where it had to be independent or not.
Okay.
And ultimately, KSCS is evaluating our own program.
Okay.
That happens
And the
in-
inventory, though, is what I'm referring to. What do you know in
think-
the building that's yours, theater companies?
That's
like
the question, right?
Yeah.
What is?
Isn't that what she's doing, Luann?
If I can answer one of them. First is, even back in early September when we asked, I mean, our understanding, these are community assets. Everything in there is. So whether it was purchased by Brighter Futures, purchased by Box Office, purchased by the fundraising committee, or donated or otherwise, those are community assets for the theater community. When we started talking about it, they were said, well, fundraising committee purchased some of those things, so they're ours. So I said, okay, so you want it differentiated. So it was trying to understand that. So in my response again on the 26th, I even stated again, okay, you said two different things. You either are saying they're community assets or you say want them separated.
Right.
So, okay, how do we continue to move forward?
Right.
You know,
Because one of the big things that's coming out of this too is Cattery Hall. You know, the
Absolutely.
theaters, company saying that we spent this amount of money on renovations, the roof, things like that that seem pretty valid. Is that not? Is that being taken into consideration in terms of allowing them to have access to that building in order to run the program
But again, we've allowed access. They've not refused to do it under the conditions we've set, but they've not even come back under any conditions. So there's no discussion on how they could use the building. We've offered the opportunity to do it. So it's not that
So
they
they
don't
would be able
have
to say,
access.
okay, as Turtle Island Company, we would like to hold this Christmas concert. Can we use the building?
We've said that back in September.
And no response.
The response that we said, look, in order to do it, in order for you to do it, we have to do an evaluation. So how are we going to do it at the same time?
Right.
Will you help doing the evaluation and inventory? That was part of the agreement. No of the assets in there can
Right.
be removed from the building because we're still doing an inventory.
Right.
There has to be a KSCS presence there. So all that had already been on the table and offered.
Right.
But they didn't want to contribute to the inventory or the evaluation.
Yes,
so we
I've
said
seen
no.
that on
You know?
Facebook.
So
Yeah.
it's not that we didn't give access, it's that they didn't want access given the conditions that we're talking
In
about.
your
Right.
opinion, what do you think is the biggest issue? Why they're not responding? Why they don't want to take part? I mean,
I don't know. Honestly, Regan, I don't know. I don't understand why an evaluation to look at the different things is a bad thing. I don't understand that. I don't understand why doing an inventory is a bad thing and knowing what's there. I mean, there's a lot of questions to this.
Do you think that there's anything specific or important that you feel the community should know or understand before we wrap up this segment?
Well, I mean, I've read some of the information going out. I've been accused, and some of my staff have been accused of a lot of things. Ultimately, if any community member has questions, they're welcome to give us a call, and we'll show all the information that we have available. And I've offered that, and some have taken me up on that. All we've been trying to do is move forward on this. The board of directors, obviously made a decision for me to proceed. They made it, and I'm not speaking for them per se, but my understanding is they made it with an effort to move forward. How do we move forward as a community? It's not about creating hatred. We're not trying to take funds. We're not trying to take anything. We're trying to put control measures in place so this program can be successful long term.
Flourish.
So where things are going now at this point? Where are they going now at this point?
Well, the next stage is to complete the evaluation. I know the inventory is close to being completed, that part of it, or at least that's my understanding. The evaluation, the rest of it is looking at the accounting records or programs. I know that they need to try to get community feedback on different programs that had been run, different activities, how successful, input, and then we want to align it to the community health plan. I know there have been questions about that. We don't doubt it contributes to mental wellness, but it's fixing the logic models so that there's a way to show that it does. Right now, it's not it's not outcome-based indicators, data. All we need to do is put the structure in place so we can get that. Again, there's no doubt about the success of Drum within the community. All we're trying to do is shore it up so long-term it can continue. Now, why the resistance and all that, I don't know. But all I can do is try to do my best.
Would you say that you have been very honest in all of your statements that you made to the public and in this process?
Absolutely. There was a question about a police incident that's currently going on, and it was my integrity was put into question, and I responded back. The last time I lied was the night of December 23rd, 2001. I've not lied about anything within this whole process, and I can show data or information on it, at least to the best of my understanding of how conversations flow.
Well, thank you very much for coming on, Lance. Do you have anything really quickly to wrap up? Or?
Good luck.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I would say good luck to the community, because we're all in it together. We are all in this together.
That's it.
Okay. Well, thank you again for your time. We appreciate that. And if you have any comments or questions regarding this segment, don't hesitate to contact us at mohawktv@hotmail.com. And of course, the executive director of Kahnawake, Sagot Degenhas Community Services, has just put the offer on the table. If you have any comments or questions, you can give them a call at 632-6880. And don't go away. There's more here on the show today. We're going to go to a quick commercial break. We'll be right back after this. This program has been brought to you by Get and Go, a proud sponsor of Mohawk TV programming. And welcome back to the show. So we're going to jump right into some of the news issues that have been happening here in Kahnawake, aside from the Turtle Island Theater issue with Kahnawake Sagot Degenhas Community Services, as you just seen that interview. Pretty interesting stuff, wouldn't you say?
Very interesting. How it's going to be played out is going to be interesting because right now it seems like even though all this information has been put out, it still seems like they're still at baby steps in terms of how they're going to look at, how future funding is going to be. I mean, again, after everything's all said and done, how I'm looking at this, the ones who are being affected are the ones who are actually interested in the performing arts. So it's interesting. It's interesting
yeah.
how this is how it's gonna work itself out, and hopefully, it doesn't take long. Hopefully, they can work things out and still have these plays coincide. So see how it goes.
And I know that we didn't have comment from anyone from the Turtle Island Theatre Company, but don't fret, that is coming. Scheduling and things like that have made it a little bit hard to get in touch with everybody, but we will have members of that group on our show within the next week or so. Moving on, there's a lot here in the community that's happening politically. This week there was consultation that began with the Kahnawake election law. This happened last Tuesday.
Right.
So one of the things that is interesting is that there was only one point that was discussed, and that was whether or not to keep the requirement of the 50% bloodline in terms of your eligibility to be able to run for the Mohawk Council of Kahnawake's chief or grand chief. So there was two groups that were set up, and they were to debate the process in terms of should we keep it or should we dismiss it.
Right.
So the Mohawk Council of Kahnawake released a statement via press release this week saying that consensus was not reached, which means that they have a set amount of time to do this. 8:30 they're finishing. So group one apparently said that to keep the 50% bloodline requirement in order to be eligible, and group two could not reach a consensus on it. So pretty interesting stuff.
It is very interesting to see how this is going to be played out, though. Right now, especially with a lot of people talking about different issues in terms of membership, they're talking about blood percentage, and fortunately, there's not an election up and coming
in 6 months from now.
In 6 months from now, so we have a little time to actually process this and maybe work it out a little bit smoother. So
it's always been a point of contention here in the community.
Sure.
I mean, obviously that 50% bloodline requirement has been a part of past elections. Some people will say that is contradictory to the membership code that was put in place by the Council of Elders,
right,
where you only needed 4 great-grandparents and not necessarily 50%. So where do we go from here in terms of aligning it with the membership code? I think there's going to be a lot of discussion, hopefully in January. I know that they also talked about the fact that there was low attendance. So the next meeting on the hearings will be taking place in January after the new year, after the holiday season has come and gone.
Right.
And I believe that they also mentioned that there was going to be a survey conducted via kiosk at the community services building, the social services building, if you will, to get some feedback on how to get the attendance up.
Yeah.
And also discuss the issue.
One thing that it's pretty alarming was the robbery that took place a couple days ago, and that has really changed people's perception as to what is happening in this community. Suspects are, or rather speculation of suspects have gone awry on social media, and I don't know if that's helping. I don't know how that's working out. It's a tough call. I mean, it's a scary thing. There were people in the pharmacy when the robbery took place. It seems to grab you and bring you back into a place where no one's really familiar with. This is always a story you hear in outside of the communities. I mean, robberies happen everywhere, but for this, there were specifics where the person went in there for narcotics. That's where it gets a little bit scary because of the depth of what was behind it. That this person went in there specifically to get pharmaceutical products to either sell or get high. There was no money. It was just drugs.
Well, I think that's a lot of speculation in terms of him just getting narcotics. You're correct. There was no cash taken.
Right.
It was, he had a knife. He walked in. He demanded this and then, fled on foot. And so when the story initially came out, there was some details in terms of the attire, flip-flops with socks, gray pants, brown suede jacket. hat with ear flaps, you know, and a very distinctive tattoo across his knuckles in terms of the letters SATO. And, you know, and I think that's what really got people talking on Facebook was, one, there was a robbery in the middle of the day in our community. You know, how bold of a person to try and pull that off and go undetected. And
Right.
number two was the person's attire, flip-flops. If you were going to be pulling a robbery in the middle of the day and thinking about running away, you know, there was some talk and questions in terms of, does this person live in the vicinity?
Right.
Because of the flip-flops. And also, the third thing was a very distinctive tattoo. You know, there was all kind of, I guess, speculation as to what it meant, what it could mean, things like that. So
Right.
that fueled a lot of debate, you know, on Facebook. And of course, people suddenly became like their own investigators overnight in terms of trying to crack the case. So far, the Kahnawake peacekeepers haven't released any more information, but we'll definitely keep the community updated on that one.
Yeah, for sure. And right now, Regan, I can tell you from the perspective of the community members, people are keeping a little bit of an extra eye on what's happening within their community as a result of this too as well.
Yes, of course, of course. One of the more fun events that happened this week, of course, was the holiday train.
Oh, yeah.
The 9th annual. It seems to become a very, you know, special event that people look forward to here in Kahnawake. The CP holiday train, if you will. And the Mohawk Council of Kahnawake, of course, has their staff helping on hand to help out and coordinate the event.
Right.
And, you know, from the looks of it, things went off without a hitch.
Big, massive, successful story that came out of there. CP Rail and the holiday train has doubled, if I'm not mistaken, the money that they're giving towards the Kahnawake Food Bank. And I think that's one of the more successful aspects of this is that in total, the holiday train has helped different communities as a whole, but this particular outing has helped Kahnawake and helped out immensely in terms of the draw of food.
Did we actually have numbers? If you can remember, just really quickly, let me just refer back really quickly to the press release that was sent out yesterday via Mohawk Council of Kahnawak's team over there.
Right.
They did send out a press release. I'm sorry, just give me 1 second. Here we go, CP3 holiday train and all around success. I'm just doing this to look at numbers very quickly. Grand Chief Mike Delisle accepted a check for $4,500 from CP on behalf of the Kahnawake Christmas Basket Committee. Approximately $800 also collected on site. 2 truckloads of non-perishable food items were collected for the Kahnawake Food Bank. Several toys were also donated. An estimated crowd of over 250 was in attendance.
It was a big,
So you had
big
volunteers
success.
from Mohawk Council, peacekeepers, Kahnawake Fire Brigade were on site to ensure the event's evenings went smoothly. They also gave out 300 hot dogs, candy canes, 250 glow sticks, and 30 gallons of hot chocolate.
Must have been good. But I mean, for the kids, I mean, more importantly, I mean, that's who you're trying to entertain. You're trying to entertain the kids.
Yeah.
And they did with all the artists that were performing on there, the bright lights of the train and how they decorated. It was a big success.
It was a big success, and some of the pictures that you just seen coming up were courtesy of Mohawk TV's friends on Facebook. We inboxed a number of people asking them if we could use their personal family photos to showcase what a special event and how well it went. So moving on from that, like really quickly, last but not least, before we head out to break, I see our camera guy giving us the heave-ho. But the Grand Chief, pleased with meetings with Quebec cabinet ministers, 3 to be exact. More political talk here in terms of our relationship with Aboriginal Affairs Minister Elizabeth Laroche to discuss the current relationship between Kahnawake and Quebec. And according to the release?
Well, according to the release, certainly this is another step towards how Canada, first off, is being perceived in the Quebec spotlight. certainly Kahnawake has a big stake within what's happening within Quebec.
Yeah. Okay. Well, one of the things about the meeting was the reaffirmation of Quebec's commitment to see further economic development here in the community. And also they talked about the bridge issue and, of course, discussions surrounding tourism.
Right.
So which kind of led into the next meeting where economic development along with Highway 30 is a big thing right now, because obviously we are looking to grow as a community and have access to those lands that will benefit Kahnawake.
That's right.
You know, so
Looking forward to see what they're planning to do with Highway 30. I'm sure we're going to get another 5 or 6 Tim Hortons down there. So.
I doubt it. From what I understand, one of the bigger projects that they have under development with Deom-Zachary is a truck stop. And we did interview Lisa Lahash on that a couple of months ago. But we're going to keep everybody up to date. Excuse me. One of the other things that, from what I understand, the meeting with the 3 ministers was successful in terms of showing opportunities that exist here in Kahnawake along Highway 30. And also, yesterday's meeting, the Mohawk Council said was not to be considered as such, but rather a good opportunity to put our position forward and ensure that we need to be considered a strong development partner. And of course, as we just said, that land is going to become a hub, or hopefully a hub on that side of our community in terms of people in Kahnawake, businesses and things developing over the next couple of years. If you notice that there was a press release that was sent out via, I guess, media last week almost from the Roussillon, announcing that they had a multi-million-dollar project that was under development for the other side of Highway 30. Now, I mean, granted, they have a large agricultural area that they are not allowed to touch that is under preservation, but they're still one step ahead of us. And I think this is one of the things that seemed to irritate people, was that, you know, we get that land back and then boom, they certainly launched that
Pretty quick. They launched that idea pretty quick.
Yeah, and they also try, you know, some people will speculate, are they trying to hinder us by, you know, launching that legal battle with Quebec in terms of that land returning to Kahnawake,
Right.
and them actually not having a say in what they, you know, in what Kahnawake is going to do with that land. So were they being, you know, strategic in terms of maybe putting a little bit of hindrance on the development of Highway 30 on our side? So, you know, a little bit of conspiracy theory going on, but never hurt anybody.
That's right. We're definitely going to be looking at that over the next couple weeks for sure.
Yeah.
I'm very excited about that. I'll tell you what we are going to do, though. We're going to take a little bit of a small break here with Regan and I with our town.
Yeah, and don't go away, because when we come back, we're going to be getting into an interview on the tobacco issue. We're going to have Chiefs in studio, Deom-Zachary and Gina Deer, coming up right after this. Stay tuned. This program has been brought to you by Get & Go, a proud sponsor of Mohawk TV programming. This program has been brought to you by Get & Go, a proud sponsor of Mohawk TV programming. And welcome back to the program. You're watching Our Town, and now in studio with us, joining us is Chiefs Deom-Zachary and Gina Deer, and today we're going to be discussing some of the issues surrounding tobacco in the community lately. And with that, ladies, welcome to studio.
Thank you.
Thanks. So from what I understand, last November 19th, last Tuesday, there was a meeting that was held at the Knights of Columbus. How did that go? What was the overall feeling once the evening was over?
Once the evening was over, if I can just start off, I felt exuberant. I was amazed that it had happened the way it did. I thought people were really, really enthusiastic. I sensed that from people. There there were people with objections to the question that had been stated, and yet I found so much energy, things that had to be worked on, things that would mean an awful lot of work in the future. So it was good that way. You know how sometimes something happens and you just feel so energetic and energized? Well, things have changed since that day, but
Yeah, I would imagine. I attended the tobacco meeting on this past Monday, actually. But in the meantime, from Tuesday to Monday, there was a lot of talk, I guess, out there in the community, whether it was at the local coffee shop or even via Facebook. You can gauge a lot of things that are going on when you're not in the same room anymore, which is amazing, you know. So there was a lot of talk about the press release, about the consensus. The word consensus was reached, seemed to bother a lot of people. But on Monday at the tobacco meeting that I attended, there was more of a support still to have regulation in place, some sort of regulation. So when you say consensus, was it meant for that there was a consensus among the tobacco industry that there is a need for regulation? Would you say that?
The word consensus, first of all, is something that requires a lot of thinking by a lot of people. For the CDMP process,
Right.
we note how consensus can happen in a crowd, in one of the groups, for instance. And sometimes you get a lot of objection in a group, but at the end of the night, you'll find that, let's say there are 15 people in a group, you'll find that 12 people are in agreement, 3 are not. And I remember one of the elders saying that it doesn't mean that everyone's 100% behind something, but that there's a sizable number of people. And you know, from that Tuesday night meeting, I gathered that there was a big majority. You know, and some people who didn't have access to or hadn't gotten a copy of the draft regulations that were spoken of by the proponent, and that was Lionel Deere, who made the opening statements and introduced what was going to be happening that evening. So basically there were about, I think, 7 to 12 people who did not have a copy, put up their hand and said they wanted to read the draft to begin with. And also, I guess, the statement as well.
So what happened, since the Tuesday night meeting? Has there been any changes, or are people still moving towards going through and supporting the CDMP process at this point?
And if I could just add a little bit more, and then Gina, if you'll take the rest. The statement that was read by Lionel Deere, who is the proponent of this regulation for tobacco, I found in there that basically they agree that the work that has been done over the past 13 to 15 years, with all of the fights that happened and all of the breakups, and till finally they've come out with the 2012 March 2013, actually, I'm wrong about that.
And that's the draft that you're referring to?
That's
Okay.
the one that they've agreed to move forward with. Doesn't mean it's perfect.
It's a working document.
It means that it's going to have to be worked on. It's a working document. So they're using that as their beginning, and they say they want to go through the CDMP process.
That's
so
what I kind of got from the Monday meeting also, that there was more people who wanted to see it be regulated through that process than not. So
So basically they said in their letter again, in their statement, they said that they would be putting their application in for the CDMP.
there was also some discussion now around the fact that type 1 or type 2, type 1 being that it can go through hearings and people can take part in it, as opposed to type 2 where it's just read and developed on the inside. Could you differentiate? Because there were some people that were saying, well, if it's type 2, I'm not, we're going to change it back to a type 1, otherwise we're not doing it.
I'll tell you.
Just to kind of explain what that is.
I would just add, sorry, Gina. It's just that in terms of type 1 or type 2, there has to be, from the Kahnawake Legislative Coordinating Committee, there has to be a decision, a legal opinion made about what kind of legislation it's going to be. Now, it might come out as a type 2 legislation. And nowhere does it mean between type 1 and type 2 that people won't have the ability to work on this. Everyone will have a copy of the draft and pick it apart section by section, the way we do right now for the Election Act hearings, the membership law hearings. You know, it's or the Justice Act hearing. That went actually by clause all the way through with discussion until everyone agreed with one clause. We're in agreement.
And then the group would move forward, and
Yes.
people sat in group 1, 2, 3, depending
Exactly.
on how many people were
Yeah.
there. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering where that fear comes from. Sorry, go ahead.
No, actually, I was going to ask you, Gina, when you came into the meeting, because you've certainly been one of the main spokespeople. Is this your portfolio, if you don't mind me asking?
Yes, it is.
As the portfolio holder for turning these regulations into something that's more palatable for the community, what's been the biggest obstacle that you've seen? Because certainly you're dealing with a lot of different people from different factions, different areas. What's been some of the challenges in working this?
Well, it's
portfolio?
the people themselves and the issues that they have with MCK. You know, the lack of trust. I got involved in the portfolio, not as the lead, but it just kind of came out that I ended up being more available to the public and to the manufacturers and able to meet with them. So I kind of took the lead from there. It's the people themselves, though. It's just a lack of trust and the accusations of MCK wanting to, you know, get dollars. And, you know, the reality is if MCK wanted to get dollars, they would have moved this a long time ago. It's not about dollars. This is about saving the people and saving the industry, because people are being criminalized through the whole process. What is happening now is laws are being created to ensure that people do jail time.
And that's the C10 law that you're making reference to?
Exactly.
Which moves it into the criminal code, whereas before it was in tax evasion and it was...
it fell
under the
Custom and
Tax-
Excise Act.
yeah.
Yes, and now it's a criminal code offense. What has happened now, you know, is the people came to MCK. It's not initiated by MCK. This was initiated by manufacturers who came to MCK saying, we need some help and we need to do something about what's happening to the people. So MCK got involved again.
Speaking of the people, there's certainly been a lot of different court cases in the past that has criminalized a lot of people by exercising their rights, and certainly one of the most notable cases was the $10 million case that stemmed about 3 years ago, and there hasn't been much talk about that particular case. Are you going to take that umbrella and try to help cases from, say, 2 to 3 years past within some of the regulations?
At this point, we can't go backwards. We have to go forwards. There's so much to do in front of us right now. I couldn't even imagine, you know, trying to go backwards. But the issue here is that the people want the process to go through CDMP, which is entirely different than MCK heading the project. The people want to head the project and be in charge, and that is fine. You know, the whole meeting that MCK called was to gauge the view of the community. And at that meeting, the manufacturers made a statement and asked for the support of the community to have the mandate to move forward. And this is their initiative. We're here to support them. So whatever this process is and how it turns out, it's beyond our control, because as we all know that the typing or categorization of this CDMP process is not in the hands of MCK. So that is going to be explained to the tobacco group by Gahande Horn-Miller, who will be setting up a meeting and explain the entire process so that they're clear on the process that they're using. Also, the tobacco working group had submitted the regulation for categorization, and the categorization was 2. And I know that the community said they're not happy, you know, if it's going to be categorized as 2. Well, us as a working group, we're not satisfied with that. And we met with legal and we discussed it, but it was in the best interest of moving this forward. And this is something that needs to be moved forward fairly quickly, because the S10, I'm sorry, C16, because they keep changing the
the title.
the titles, So has already passed reading, and there's one more reading left, and there's a standing committee that will take place December 5th, I believe, is the
Friday.
date that we have.
Yeah.
Yes.
Next week.
So we've been given short notice
Yesterday.
to appear. Yes, and things are moving very, very quickly. So after the holidays, one of the fears was we were panicking and creating regulations too quickly, and that this law may not pass. But I said, you know what, we're not going to make it. This law will pass before we have this together.
Right.
That's a
And I
reality.
think that they discussed that at the meeting that had taken place on Monday, and there was also some fear about the type of law, and I think sometimes people not understanding the difference between the two, and maybe some misinformation can cause some of that, but still there was, I think, to a certain degree, she's right in terms of it being coming from the inside, because they did talk about, well, we need to take care of our house first and then worry about outside governments, and again, somebody brought up the fact that, and I'm sure you must have heard all of this by now, in terms of the tobacco industry itself trying to work through some of their issues. And history repeating itself. Somebody's saying, well, we tried to do this last year at the retail level, and the pyramid wasn't followed, and so on and so forth. And now it's the manufacturers that want to do it, and now it's okay. And so these are some of the things, I think, that create that constant fear, or the issues that they have among in the industry, and how do we move forward as a community. Because they talked about also having a community vote and then a tobacco industry vote. And
Well,
is that even possible?
I'm always in for a community vote, because whatever people decide in this community at one point or another affects everybody. So I am actually in favor of community votes over CDMP process. Not enough people participate in the CDMP process, and a lot of people do participate in voting. So it gives us a better view of what the community wants and the direction. So for me, I'm all for that. And I told Lionel Deere Jr. that I will help in any way. If they want to take the lead on this, I'm for it. It's led by the people, for the people, that's fine. I'm here to help in any way that I can. I told them, just let me know where you want me to assist. In the meantime, I said I would continue with other chiefs that are also looking at regulations, because this is not a Kahnawake issue. All the First Nations involved in tobacco are all scrambling at this point to do something. And you know what? We've had some meetings, and I'm going to continue to meet with them and try and do something on a more political level with the government. Instead of just sitting back waiting for regulations to happen here, I will try and continue to work on a different front.
Right. Very quickly, we have 2 minutes and we have to wrap it up.
Very, very quickly. For the both of you guys, I just wanted to ask you, with other cigarette dealers that already made their deals with Quebec, with signing with Quebec, with adhering to their laws, is there a way for them to be umbrellaed under the existing laws that the community of Kahnawake is going to be putting together?
You mean people with the licenses? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. That's what I
Because
meant,
there's only one license as far as I know in Kahnawake now. Nobody has the licenses anymore. They've all given them up.
Okay.
And the other thing is that we're not there yet. First of all, the community has to decide what the regulations are going to be. Then we have to really promote what is going to be our structure and how we see this regulation as an organized community.
Right.
Because we cannot just be all over the board on this. There has to be consistency. We have to be able to say, well, we're going to do this, we're going to have to do it and follow through. We can't always be all over the place. It does us no good, really.
Right.
So with that, is there anything else that either of you feel is important to add at this point?
Well, I'll just add this. I really think it's so important to be unified on any issue. We have to find our way past petty differences and decide what we can do for the benefit of the community. We have to get over the way we've always, as you described it earlier on, that we've always maintained our rivalries and we can't seem to get over it. You were talking about that earlier. But I think for some things we have to start really coming together and be unified on our positions. Makes us stronger.
One important thing to mention is on Friday, we will be withdrawing the letter that we submitted for categorization of the regulations from MCK, and we will have it open so that the people can do it themselves.
Great. Okay. Lance?
Thank you so much, guys, for coming in. I really appreciate it. A little bit more insight as to what's going on with this, and keep us posted. It's very interesting. Very interesting.
Thanks for having us here.
You're more than welcome. We're going to return back with Our Town right here on Mohawk TV.
This program has been brought to you by Get and Go, a proud sponsor of Mohawk TV programming. And welcome back to the program. Well, that was definitely an interesting interview with Chief Gina Deer and Christine Deom-Zachary. As always, the tobacco industry and any story relating to tobacco in this community can sometimes be contentious, as you know.
Absolutely. You know, I'm very, very excited to see what the ruling's going to be, but time is of the essence to see exactly if they can get all their eggs in the basket, so to speak.
Ducks in order.
Ducks in order, exactly.
She did mention, Christine did mention the fact that there is an urgency, there's a sense of urgency to this law, and you know, trying to move forward and counter some of the legislation that's coming down through the Canadian government. So with that, we're going to keep you posted as this story evolves. And also, if you did not hear, Chief Gina Deer did mention that there will be a retraction of the type of law.
That's correct.
This Friday, actually.
That's correct.
So stay tuned. And don't forget, you can also catch us and all the latest news on Kahnawake411.com. But before we head out, I would like to thank you for coming back on air with us.
Oh, you're more than welcome. I'm enjoying
It's been quite the last few shows. Lance has joined the cast and crew here again at Mohawk TV. But not only are you doing local television again, you're also back on the morning show at our local radio station.
That's
and how's
right.
that going?
It's going very well. Thank you so much. Working with a great team. Coming back from Aguzasne to come back here was interesting. I didn't expect to go back on radio. I had other plans. But I'm excited to do this. At the same time, I'm also excited to be doing anything in terms of media here in Kahnawake. So doing this is just as sweet as working at the radio station.
So do you feel the love now that you're back home, and have the people in the community said, hey, it's nice to see you or hear you back on air?
I'm very surprised at that. And in all honesty, I'm very, very surprised. Not that people are polite anyway in the community, but I wasn't trying to make it a big thing. It was just, it's a job, and try to do the best job you can for the community and of course for yourself. So with that, you know, here's to working
Being
as
back
best as we
home.
can. Yeah, being home.
Welcome back.
That's it.
Welcome back.
That's
welcome
about it.
back. Welcome back.
Well, thank you so much for, and that was good singing.
It was really not that good.
But thank you so much for having me back. And I'd like to thank the community of Kahnawake for tuning in to Our Town. Again, Regan, Jacobs, and myself always are looking for comments from the community. So by all means, if you see us, let us know what you think of the program. And by all means, make comments. You have suggestions, things you want to see?
For stories, things like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
By all means, let us know.
Yep, we do our best here at Mohawk TV, so thanks for staying with us, and onagiwahi.
Kanya ke haga thadi adaraste kayerniga hyadu zewaderoru.
This program has been brought to you by Get and Go, a proud sponsor of Mohawk TV programming.